I had lived in this neighborhood for 3 years without a single problem until last Tuesday. It was 7:58 p.m. I was standing in my living room, watching the second hand on my wall clock tick toward 8 when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my neighbor, Marla. Don't even think about stepping outside after 8. HOA just passed a safety curfew. At first I laughed. A curfew? For grown adults? This had to be one of Marla's sarcastic jokes. But then I noticed the paper taped to my front door. Bright red, stamped with HOA notice, and in bold letters. For the safety and tranquility of our community, no resident may be outside past 8 p.m. Violations will be penalized. The penalty part was underlined. I remember staring at it, my heart rate picking up. Not because I was scared, but because I could already feel my blood boiling. Who gave these people the right to tell me when I could walk on my own driveway? And then came the part that really made my jaw drop. Someone had written my name at the bottom of the notice, in thick black marker, almost like they were daring me. So at exactly 8:03 p.m., I opened my front door, stepped outside, and that's when the shouting began. They didn't just warn me, they attacked. They didn't know I had a plan that would flip this entire HOA's power on its head. When I first moved into Brookside Estates, it looked like the kind of neighborhood you only see on glossy reel. Estate brochures, freshly painted houses, perfectly trimmed lawns, and neighbors who smiled just long enough to make you think they were friendly. But anyone who's lived in an HOA-run community knows the truth. Behind every perfect lawn is someone policing it with a clipboard. The HOA president, Douglas Briggs, was the worst of them. He was tall, pale, with that smug I own this place smirk. The kind of guy who wore a polo shirt tucked into khakis even on weekends. He had a voice that could slice butter. Not because it was sharp, but because it was so annoyingly precise, like every word had been measured on a scale before he said it. The safety curfew wasn't even in our bylaws, which told me one thing. It was Douglas's idea. And if it was Douglas's idea, it meant one of two things. Either he had an agenda, or he was bored and needed to feel powerful. I'd soon find out it was both. Earlier that afternoon, I'd caught him on my security camera pacing in front of my driveway, scribbling something on a clipboard. He didn't notice the camera, because his focus was on the streetlight across from my house. Later, I learned they were calling it the incident. Apparently 2 teenagers had been caught vaping near the fountain at night, and suddenly that justified locking down the entire neighborhood after 8 p.m. At 8:03 that night, when I stepped outside, the first voice I heard was Douglas's, loud, sharp, and dripping with authority. "You're in violation," he shouted, storming toward me like I'd just robbed a bank. Marla appeared out of nowhere, filming on her phone like she was about to win some neighborhood journalism award. Then 2 more HOA board members emerged from the shadows. Yes, actual shadows, like they'd been waiting for me to break the rule. "Step back inside," Douglas barked. "This is your only warning." But then one of them, a wiry guy named Kent, muttered, "Just loud enough for me to hear or else." Took a step forward instead. Or else what? That's when Douglas's face turned the color of overripe tomatoes. He didn't answer. Instead, Kent moved closer. Too close, like he was trying to intimidate me. And then with one sudden shove, he made his mistake. That was just the beginning. Kent's shove wasn't enough to knock me over, but it was enough to light a fire in me. I steadied myself, locked eyes with him, and for a split second no one moved. Marla's camera was still rolling. Douglas adjusted his polo, like he was the CEO of Neighborhood Control Inc. "Last warning," he said again, his voice trembling slightly, not from fear, but from barely contained rage. I smiled, just enough to let them know they hadn't scared me, and stepped right past them down my driveway into the cool night air. That's when they lost it. Over the next few days, the harassment escalated in ways that would have been laughable if they weren't so pathetic. First came the fines. $200 for disregarding community safety protocol. Then $350 for loitering on personal property after restricted hours. Yes, loitering on my own property. When I refused to pay, Douglas taped the fines directly to my front door in big neon envelopes like he wanted my entire street to see. 2 mornings later, I woke up to find my trash cans gone. Completely gone. When I asked around, the HOA claimed they had been confiscated for being visible from the street. I checked the security footage. Douglas and Kent, 11:47 p.m., dragging my bins down the road like raccoons who'd won the lottery. A few days after that, I found my mailbox stuffed with printouts of the HOA's code of conduct, each page highlighted, underlined and covered in sticky notes with passive-aggressive messages like, "Rules are rules and think of the children." But it wasn't just petty paper warfare. One night around 7:55 p.m., I caught Kent crouching by my driveway with a tape measure. "Just checking setbacks," he said with that smug half-smile. Another time I found Douglas, taking photos of my porch light, claiming it was too bright and disturbing. Nocturnal wildlife. My favorite was when they actually sent me a violation notice because I waved at a passing car after 8:12 p.m., engaging in non-emergency communication outside restricted hours. I thought it couldn't get more absurd until they sent a formal warning about my cat, my indoor cat. Potential to create a disturbance if visible from windows after curfew. By now, my irritation had shifted into something sharper. This wasn't just about control, it was personal. They wanted me gone. They were willing to break their own rules to do it. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. I had just stepped outside with my phone to check the sky. It was one of those rare nights when the stars actually broke through the city's haze. I was maybe 3 steps onto the sidewalk when I heard it. The sound of hurried footsteps behind me. Before I could turn, Kent was there again, and this time he grabbed my arm. "That's it," he hissed. "You're done here." Marla's voice came from somewhere in the dark. Got it all on camera. They weren't just enforcing rules. They were building a case, twisting every little moment into ammunition. That's when I decided this wasn't going to be a quiet battle. If they wanted a war, I'd give them one. And I already knew exactly how to win. The next morning, I woke up with a kind of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. Because while they'd been busy playing petty dictator, I'd been quietly gathering my own ammunition. And unlike theirs, mine wasn't neon envelopes and sticky notes. It was hard. Undeniable evidence. For the past 2 weeks, every late-night trash can heist, every illegal inspection, every shove, every insult, they were all recorded on my home security cameras. But I didn't just have video. I had audio from my smart doorbell, timestamps, and even copies of the HOA bylaws. Bylaws they were blatantly breaking. I knew Douglas's ego wouldn't let him keep his hands clean forever. And sure enough, there it was, footage of him, trespassing on my porch at 11:53 p.m., tearing down my holiday lights because they were non-seasonal. And the best part? Kent, on camera, bragging to Marla about how they were going to make her move out. The plan was simple. Turn their own obsession with rules into the weapon that would bring them down. I started small. I printed a giant poster of Douglas standing on my property at midnight, complete with the timestamp, and taped it to my front window where every neighbor could see. Then I sent an anonymous tip to 3 other homeowners who had quietly complained about the HOA over the years. I told them to check their own security footage for late-night inspections. Within days, my phone lit up with messages. Turns out I wasn't the only target. The HOA had been abusing their power for months, but they'd gotten sloppy. I called a meeting. Not an HOA meeting, but a gathering at my house. We didn't just swap stories. We swapped evidence. By the end of the night, we had a 30-page file of documented harassment, trespassing, and financial abuse. And I had something even better, a direct line to the local news. But I wasn't going to tip my hand yet. I wanted Douglas and his little midnight patrol to feel untouchable right up until the moment the ground disappeared beneath them. So I baited them. Every night, I stepped outside after 8:00 p.m., sometimes just to water my plants, sometimes to wave at passing cars, sometimes to stand in my driveway sipping tea like I had all the time in the world. Came on a Thursday night. I had just stepped outside with my phone to check the sky. It was one of those rare HTS when the stars actually broke through the city's haze. And every night they came running, shouting, threatening, recording. What they didn't realize was that this time, I had positioned cameras at angles they couldn't see, catching every aggressive step, every curse, every threat. By the end of the week, I didn't just have enough evidence to get them removed from the HOA board. I had enough to make them answer to the police. And the takedown was going to be public, very public. It was a Tuesday evening when I decided it was time. The sun had just dipped below the rooftops, and the street was bathed in that golden glow that makes everything look deceptively peaceful. I had already made the calls. 2 neighbors, the police non-emergency line, and a certain local news reporter who owed me a favor. At exactly 8:05 p.m., I stepped out onto my driveway, wearing a bright red hoodie that practically screamed, "Come and get me." I set up a small folding chair, placed my tea on the armrest, and just sat there. It didn't take long. Douglas appeared first, storming out of the shadows like a mall cop on a power trip. Kent was right behind him, already pulling out his phone, and Marla trailed along with that gleeful little smirk. "You're in violation!" Douglas barked. "Again!" I didn't move. Instead, I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Perfect. Please, say that again for the camera." That's when the second surprise hit them. The camera crew stepping out from behind my fence. The look on Douglas's face? Priceless. He froze mid-step, realizing for the first time that the power dynamic had shifted. The reporter introduced herself and started asking questions. Hard questions. Is it true you've been enforcing curfew rules that aren't in the bylaws? Is it true you've entered residents' properties without permission? We have video. Kent muttered something about misunderstandings and started backing away, but it was too late. Blue and red lights flashed at the end of the street. The officers stepped out, asked for IDs, and one of them turned to Douglas. "Sir, we need to talk to you about multiple reports of harassment and trespassing. The neighbors I'd rallied were there too. Cameras out, recording every second." One by one they stepped forward, handing over printed copies of their own evidence. Douglas's smug expression evaporated completely when the officer mentioned the words, "possible restraining order." And because poetic justice loves a dramatic twist, the reporter ended the segment with me standing in my driveway, tea in hand, as Douglas was led to his own car by the police, while Kent tried to hide behind a tree, like a cartoon villain who just got caught. The story aired that night. By morning, the HOA's email inbox was flooded with angry messages from residents, and a petition to remove the entire board had more than enough signatures. Douglas resigned for personal reasons 2 days later. Kent disappeared entirely. And Marla? She stopped making eye contact altogether. The neighborhood feels different now. Quieter, but in a good way. Like everyone's, finally breathing, without someone peering over their shoulder with a clipboard. My trash cans are back where they belong. My cat can sit in the window without being labeled a potential disturbance, and I can step outside at midnight if I feel like it, just to listen to the crickets. The best part? Every time I see that streetlight where the incident supposedly began, I smile because it's still there, still glowing, still casting light on the exact spot Douglas thought he owned. I've learned something about people like him. They thrive on intimidation, but they crumble when you turn their own tactics back on them. The rules they weaponize can be the same rules that take them down. And honestly, the look on his face when the camera crew stepped out was worth every fine, every petty warning, every stolen trash can. A few neighbors have told me they felt braver after what happened. One even said, "You gave us our street back." That meant more to me than anything. So here's my advice. If someone tries to shrink your world with rules they invented, don't just push back, document, expose, and let the truth do the heavy lifting. Oh, and always have a cup of tea ready for the victory shot. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done if your HOA tried to ban you from stepping outside after 8 p.m.? And if you made it this far, drop a "justice served" in the comments, because trust me, justice never tasted sweeter.